Are we filming? Yes, we are. So welcome to another video. I want to talk about Filofax Sherwoods, the Filofax Sherwood model that was made apparently between 1990 and 1994 here in the UK before manufacturing moved abroad. It's one of my it's a model that I'm fairly familiar with because it represents my personal introduction into the world of Filofaxes. So this is the model. This is my own personal Filofax that I bought in September 93. So I've had it just over 30 years. And I didn't know how good it was and how good it was to become when I bought it. I just walked into a branch of W.H. Smith's. You can Google them. They've been, there are stationers in the UK that have been going over 200 years. Fantastic, isn't it, really? And I went in because I had been given a Filofax style binder a few months before, and I quite liked the concept, but, and here's the flatability bit, the one I was given as a present was a fairly basic one, but it had no flatability at all. If you didn't keep two hands on it like this, it would snap shut like a clamshell. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But here we are, and you'll have to trust me here. This is the one. This is the model that I bought in W.H. Smith's all those years ago. And it had perfect flatability from the first day of purchase. And I didn't know that years later, having becoming the owner of over 100 Filofaxes, I didn't realise just how important, at least to me, flatability was to become. And I have some that have great flatability like this, and some that perhaps don't have such great flatability. But I've always been pleased with my serendipitous discovery all those years ago, because in my humble experience, this represents the sweet spot, at least back in the day when Filofaxes were all the rage. It represents the sweet spot where you get a lot for your money, but anything more than that was going into the realms of luxury that wasn't absolutely necessary, at least for me. And I didn't know that at the time. I paid $49.99 for this, £50. So in today's money, in January 2024, that'd be just over £100, maybe £110. So pretty good value. And about the same as many binders of a similar quality today. And I like it. Not only for practical reasons, but for sentimental reasons as well. But as many of you know, over that perhaps 4-year period, the specification of the leather changed, and the design changed slightly. And this, as I understand it, was not one of the earliest ones. So I bought this in 1993, but who knows when it was manufactured. I assume it was manufactured in either 1993 or 1992, but I don't know. I'm not privy to that information. But I have 4 of these, at least 4 that I can put my hands on right now. I want to show you what I believe is an earlier version, and it's this one. Is it this one? No, it's not this one. Sorry. It is this one. They all look the same. They're all black and they all look the same, but there are subtle differences. So this is, I believe, an earlier version, unless someone can correct me, and there are more knowledgeable Filofax enthusiasts out there for sure. But this one, the leather, I believe this is earlier, and I'm led to believe that because there's no hood surrounding the zip. So if you look at the one I've just showed you, there is a protective piece of leather here, so that when you have the paper, let's get a bit of paper here and put this in. So just excuse me while I blow my nose. That's better. So as you close it, there is potential for the paper to foul the zip. So let's try this with the early one that doesn't have that hood and see if it does. I've never actually tried this, but let's give it a go. So, as you can see, there is potentially some possibility, or maybe even an inevitability, of the paper fouling the zip, and it is quite sharp. So, clearly something that they, i.e. the designers of these binders back in the day, back in the 90s, 30 years ago and more, they changed the design to cover up the zip, which is probably a good idea. But notwithstanding that, the actual quality of what I believe to be an earlier version is absolutely superb. It feels fantastic. And very, very similar, but it just has a slightly better feel than the one I've had for 30 years. So I've only had this probably for about a year that I spotted and added to my collection. Very, very hard to tell them apart, but I just feel that the leather on this one feels slightly nicer than the one I've had for 30 years. Might be in my mind, but it definitely feels slightly more luxurious than this one. But it's very, very close. It's very, very close. And let me just zoom in. And you can see that the quality of the cinching around the corners is very, very similar. The actual specification of the leather straps is very, very similar. This one feels slightly superior to this one, but you know, it's very, very hard to distinguish between them. And the rings themselves, let me just zoom out again. The rings themselves, I can't tell the difference between them. They feel pretty good. So this one, I would say, is even nicer than the one I've had for 32 years. And then we have a slight change. This one is virtually identical, and the rings feel good. And it's more of a well-used version, but this leather is completely different to this leather of an early version, and this one, which is my version that I've used virtually every day for 30 years. This feels more like a Portland rather than a Sherwood, but I'm pretty sure that it is a Sherwood. It really, really feels nice, but it's different. It is different to my other two. Still very nice though. But then you come to this one. This is the final and fourth version. And I don't know, but I suspect, and I have read, if you look at the Philo Wiki and other sources, there is talk of a change of leather quality, a kind of change that is going down market, cheaper leather basically. The design is the same. It still has very, very good flatability because of the way it's constructed, but this feels completely different again. It feels, it's more plasticky. Now this is definitely leather, but it's not the same leather as this one, and it's not the same leather as this one, and it's not the same leather as this well-used example. So my hunch is that this is one of the versions with what's been described as alternative leather. Perhaps not such good quality, not such a nice feel, not so luxurious, all things being relative in what is a utilitarian binder that isn't or wasn't marketed as fancy. This is kind of middle of the range at the time. But there's definitely something about this. And one thing that I've also noticed on this one is the rings, at least to me, don't feel the same as the other three models. So I'm just wondering whether the specification of the rings has changed and the specification of the leather has changed. And also, although you can't be sure with just a sample of one, if you look at this, and I'll zoom in to show you again. Right, let's keep that horizontal, and you can see that this should have failed. This should have failed quality control because this has been cut and sewn at a slight angle. It's not straight. So this one was one of those rare, shall we say, rare examples where poor quality slipped through the net. And this is stamped made in England. So presumably made in the same fashion, probably by the same workers in the same location as my other three. But clearly this slipped through the net. I mean, it's very, very pronounced. It's not a major problem, but you know, there we go. You can see it even better there. It's at an angle, which kind of I haven't had this for 30 years. This is one that I've acquired recently over the last couple of years. But do you know what? If you'd spent 20 quid back in the day, 50 quid back in the day, if I had bought this, I would have sent it back because I would have this would have been, I would have found it a bit irksome. I mean, it functions, but you know, it's a little bit it doesn't, you know, it's not something that you'd want to deal with on a daily basis, because every time you opened it, you would be reminded of the bad, or at least in this particular example, the bad quality control for arguably what was being sold as a premium product. Because when these were manufactured, there were lots of other firms jumping on the bandwagon making these Filofax-esque binders. And so this is not really desirable. Nevertheless, a nice binder, very, very nice, but it just, to me, it's very, very hard to convey in a video, but it doesn't convey the same sort of feeling as my earlier ones, which just feel sensational. But it's difficult. It's difficult. Everybody has a different take on these things. But I'm probably going to get more Sherwoods because they are such a fantastic binder. I would say if you're after a quality binder where the leather will last, not too fancy, and pretty useful. I mean, it probably lasts another 100 years, of course. What I would say is if you're looking for a Sherwood, then have a look at the photographs and just try and get the feel, because just a feel of the one you're buying, because they're going to be different. There's no such thing as, that's a Filofax Sherwood. It's a Filofax Sherwood, but they come in many different guises. And I would say beware, not necessarily beware, but be aware, not beware, but be aware that some are better than others, albeit they're all pretty good. Some feel more luxurious than others, and the leather feels more utilitarian compared to my other versions. So maybe get an early one. I would say perhaps avoid these, what I believe to be a very early one, because you might have problems with the paper catching this unguarded zip. So that might be important to you. If you're using one from day to day one where you're opening and shutting it all the time, using it as a online diary or a planner, this is probably not the one to go for. But it would be okay for reference, an A to Z reference, because it's on the shelf. You're not using it every day. So I would say avoid one of the very early ones. Look for one with the hood over protecting the zip, and just have a close look at the photographs, because it's easier to zoom in these days with good quality laptops, desktops, and mobile phones. You can see the image fairly closely, particularly on eBay. And then use your skill and judgments to find the right one. I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed with a Filofax Sherwood model, because they do seem to have a good reputation. They have good flatability, all of them, and also they don't have any problems with the cracking of the leather, or indeed the chipping of the leather or peeling of the leather that does sadly affect certain models all the way up to the present day. You won't have any trouble with this leather. It's pretty good. I've had no trouble. And with this one in particular, which I've been using for 31 years, this has taken an absolute hammering, as you can tell. Lots and lots of marks. It really has taken a hammering, and yet I have yet to see the leather splitting and what I believe to be, cardboard underneath. These do have man-made stiffeners inside, as you can hear. but they have yet to wear through in the corners where typically you are likely to have trouble with some other models, particularly more recent models where the leather is perhaps more prone to wear. But you know, you take your choice, you take your chances. But thanks very much for watching. I've been meaning to compare. My Sherwood models for some time. I think I've got a couple more somewhere, but they're in a box somewhere. I can't find them. But I'm clearly a fan of Filofax Sherwoods. Did I mention I was a fan of Filofax Sherwoods? Anyway, thanks for watching. Until next video, goodbye.